The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath the transparent dome, and the gathered representatives of 1,000 species sat and floating. Platforms arranged in perfect circles around the central stage. Today was supposed to be a day of celebration. After 12,000 years of work, the Vorath Collective had finally completed their great atlas, a perfect map of every star, planet, and civilization in the galaxy. Ambassador Keth Voren stood at the center of the hall, his tall gray body draped in ceremonial robes that shimmered with holographic star charts. His 4 eyes scanned the crowd with obvious pride as he prepared to make his announcement. The Vorath had dedicated their entire civilization to this single purpose. They believed that knowledge was the highest form of worship, and the Atlas was their greatest offering to the universe. "Today marks the end of our sacred journey," Keth Voren declared. His voice amplified to reach every corner of the massive chamber. "Every system has been charted. Every civilization has been recorded. Every mystery has been solved. The Great Atlas is complete." The hall erupted in applause that sounded like thunder rolling across mountains. Species that had been spacefaring for millions of years clapped their appendages together. Younger races who had only recently joined the galactic community cheered with equal enthusiasm. It was a moment of unity that the galaxy had not seen in centuries. But in a small platform near the back of the hall, Commander Laura Bennett of the human exploration vessel Horizon did not clap. She sat quietly with her arms crossed, studying the massive holographic display that floated above Keth Voren's head. The map was beautiful, billions of stars connected by glowing lines that represented trade routes and communication networks. She could see Earth's position marked with a small blue dot, barely visible among the countless other worlds. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They were still considered primitive newcomers by galactic standards, invited to council meetings more as a courtesy than as equals. Most species expected humans to remain quiet and learn from their betters. Laura had other plans. She noticed something strange about the map. On the far edge of the galaxy, in the spiral arm where Earth's solar system was located, there was a large region that remained completely dark. No stars were marked. No trade routes passed through it. It was as if someone had taken a piece of the map and simply erased it. Laura raised her hand and waited to be recognized. The Council's protocol officer, a small insectoid creature named Veth, eventually noticed her and granted permission to speak. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the human representative with expressions ranging from curiosity to annoyance. "I have a question about the Atlas," Laura said, her voice steady, despite the weight of attention pressing down on her. "There appears to be a blank region in the outer spiral arm. If the Atlas is complete, why is that area empty?" The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. Keth Voren's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of extreme discomfort among his species. Several of the older ambassadors shifted in their seats and exchanged worried glances. Even the protocol officer seemed to shrink back from Laura's platform. "That region is called the Hollow Reach," Keth Voren finally answered, his voice noticeably quieter than before. "It has been deemed unmappable by the collective." Laura frowned. "Unmappable? I thought you said every mystery had been solved. Some places are not meant to be known," Keth Voren replied. There was something in his tone that sounded almost like fear. "The Hollow Reach has been marked as forbidden since before the current galactic order. Every expedition sent to chart it has vanished. Every probe has returned, corrupted or not returned at all. We do not speak of it." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many of the younger species had never heard of the Hollow Reach. They leaned forward in their platforms, eager to learn more about this apparent gap in galactic knowledge. But the older races, the ones who had been spacefaring for millions of years, remained silent. Their expressions suggested they knew exactly what Keth Voren was talking about and wished he would stop. Laura stood up from her seat and walked to the edge of her platform. She looked directly at Keth Voren, and something in her gaze made the tall, gray alien take a step backward. "I find that very interesting," Laura said slowly, "because according to your own star charts, Earth is located at the edge of that forbidden region. In fact, Our entire solar system sits right on the border of the hollow reach.
Ow.
The murmurs turned to gasps. Several ambassadors rose from their seats in alarm. Kethvorin's gray skin turned several shades paler as the implications of Laura's words sank in. "That is not possible," he stammered. "Humans are a young species. You only recently developed space travel. You cannot be connected to the hollow reach." Laura smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And yet here we are. We came from that dark spot on your perfect map. We evolved there, built our civilization there, and reached the stars from there. So I will ask again, what exactly is in the hollow reach that frightens you so much?" The hall descended into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded answers from the Vorath Collective. Others called for immediate investigation of the human homeworld. A few even suggested that humans should be quarantined until the matter could be resolved. Through it all, Laura remained standing at the edge of her platform. Watching the panic spread through the most powerful gathering in the galaxy, she had suspected for years that there was something strange about humanity's position in the cosmos. The speed of human technological development, the unusual resilience of the species, the strange gaps in galactic records regarding Earth's region of space, it all pointed to something hidden. An elderly figure rose from a platform near the center of the hall. He belonged to a species called the Altheri, one of the oldest civilizations still in existence. His body was withered and frail, but his eyes burned with ancient knowledge. The crowd fell silent as he raised one trembling hand. "The human speaks a truth that we have long tried to forget," the elder said, his voice carrying the weight of millions of years. "The hollow reach is not empty. It is sealed. And what lies within is a secret that predates every civilization in this room." He turned to face Laura directly, and she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. It was not fear or anger. It was sorrow. "You ask what frightens us about that region of space," the elder continued. "The answer is simple. We are frightened because we put something there, something powerful beyond measure, something dangerous beyond description. We exiled them to that darkness and built barriers to keep them contained forever." Laura felt her heart beating faster. "Who did you exile?" The elder closed his eyes, as if the memory caused him physical pain. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper that somehow reached every corner of the vast hall. "We called them the architects. They were the first great civilization, the builders of everything we now take for granted. And if humans truly come from the hollow reach, then you are either their descendants, their creations, or something that evolved in their shadow." He paused and opened his eyes to meet Laura's gaze. "Any of those possibilities terrifies us more than you can possibly understand." The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had witnessed countless historic moments over the millennia. Wars had been declared and ended within its walls. Alliances had been forged and broken. But never before had the assembled representatives sat in such complete and utter silence as they did now, staring at the small human woman who had just shattered everything they thought they knew about the universe, Laura. Bennett looked back at them without flinching. Whatever secrets the galaxy had been keeping about humanity's origins, she intended to uncover them all. 3 days passed before the Galactic Council reconvened. During that time, researchers from a dozen species worked without sleep to pull ancient records from the deepest archives. Files that had been sealed for millions of years were opened for the first time since the current galactic order began. What they found changed everything. Laura Bennett sat in the same platform she had occupied during the initial announcement, but now the atmosphere in the Great Hall was completely different. Gone was the celebration and pride. In its place was a heavy tension that pressed down on everyone present. The older species looked exhausted and haunted. The younger ones looked confused and frightened. Elder Sivmoth of the Altheri stood at the central stage, supported by 2 younger members of his species. His body seemed even more frail than before, as if the weight of the secrets he was about to reveal had aged him further in just 72 hours. When he spoke, his voice crackled like dry leaves in autumn wind. "What I am about to tell you has been hidden from the galaxy for longer than most of your civilizations have existed," he began. "We kept these secrets not out of malice, but out of fear. We believed that forgetting was safer than remembering. We were wrong, he gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the stage. It showed the galaxy as it had looked millions of years ago, different borders, different civilizations, different powers. At the center of it all was a single symbol that pulsed with golden light. Before any of us reached the stars, there was another civilization, Sivmoth continued. They called themselves the Architects, and that name was not given lightly. They did not simply travel through space. They shaped it. They moved stars like pieces on a game board. They constructed planets from raw materials. They created the very foundations of faster-than-light travel that we all use today. The display shifted to show images recovered from ancient ruins, massive structures that dwarfed anything the modern galaxy had ever built, ships the size of small moons, stations that orbited black holes and harvested their energy, technology so advanced that even the oldest species present could not understand how it worked. For millions of years, the Architects guided the development of younger species, Sivmoth said. They taught us how to reach the stars. They helped us build our first colonies. They were gods, too, as powerful, wise, and seemingly benevolent. Laura leaned forward in her seat. She could sense that the story was about to take a darker turn. The faces of the older ambassadors confirmed her suspicion. They knew what was coming. But the Architects grew restless. Sivmoth continued, his voice dropping lower. They had mastered everything the physical universe had to offer, and they began to seek new frontiers. They started experimenting with forbidden science's technologies that we still do not fully understand. They learned to fold space in ways that created permanent tiers in reality. They built machines that could trap and manipulate consciousness itself. They even attempted to alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized regions. The holographic display showed images of destruction worlds torn apart, stars that had gone dark, regions of space where normal physics no longer applied. Laura felt a chill run down her spine despite the climate-controlled environment of the hall. The younger species grew afraid, Sivmoth said. We had trusted the Architects to guide us, but their experiments were becoming dangerous. Entire systems were being destroyed in their pursuit of knowledge. Civilizations that had existed for thousands of years vanished overnight when Architect experiments went wrong. We begged them to stop, but they would not listen. They believed their quest for understanding was more important than our survival. Keth Vorn of the Vorath Collective spoke up from his platform. So what happened? How did you stop beings with that much power? Sivmoth's expression grew even more troubled. We did not stop them. Not truly. The younger species united in a way that had never happened before. Hundreds of civilizations joined together in a war against the Architects that lasted for 300 years. Billions died. Entire star systems were sacrificed as weapons. We threw everything we had against them, and still we barely survived. The display showed the final battle, a coalition of ships numbering in the millions surrounding a single Architect vessel. The scale was almost impossible to comprehend. The Architect ship was beautiful and terrible, a structure of flowing silver that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. In the end, we did not defeat them, Sivmoth admitted. We convinced them to leave. The war had shown the Architects that the younger species would fight to extinction rather than submit to their experiments. They grew tired of the conflict and agreed to withdraw to a single region of space. The area you now call the Hollow Reach? We built barriers around that region using technology they themselves had given us. We sealed them away and swore to forget they ever existed. Laura stood up slowly. You said you sealed them away, but humans evolved in that region. We developed there for hundreds of thousands of years without any knowledge of these Architects. How is that possible if the area was supposed to be a prison? Every eye in the chamber turned to her, then back to Sivmoth. The elder's silence stretched for several long moments before he answered. That is the question that has troubled us since you revealed your origins, he said finally. The barriers were supposed to be impenetrable. Nothing should have been able to evolve within the Hollow Reach without Architect interference. The fact that humans exist suggests one of three possibilities. He raised one trembling finger. First, you could be descendants of the Architects themselves, beings who chose to take physical form and develop naturally over time. A second finger rose. Second, you could be creations of the architects of species designed and seeded on your world, for purposes we cannot guess. A third finger joined the others. Third, you could be something that evolved in the presence of architect technology and energy as species shaped by forces that we deliberately tried to contain. Laura crossed her arms. And which possibility do you believe? Sivmoth shook his head slowly. I do not know. But I can tell you this: humans have developed faster than any species in galactic history. You went from primitive tools to space travel in less than 10,000 years. Most species take 10 times that long. Your brains are unusually adaptable. Your bodies can survive in conditions that would kill most other beings. And your capacity for both creation and destruction is remarkable, even by architect standards. The elder paused and looked directly at Laura with those ancient, sorrowful eyes. Whatever you are, Commander Bennett, you carry something of the architects within you. Whether that is their blood, their design, or simply their influence, I cannot say. But the galaxy has spent millions of years trying to forget the terror of that ancient war. Your very existence reminds us that some things cannot be forgotten, they can only be postponed. Laura did not respond immediately. She thought about human history, the wars, the achievements, the endless drive to explore and understand and conquer. She thought about how quickly humanity had adapted to every challenge thrown at them. She thought about the strange feeling she'd always carried, the sense that humans were meant for something greater than the small blue world where they had evolved. You fear us because of what the architects were, she said finally. But you have not asked the most important question. Svivmoth tilted his head. And what question is that? Laura smiled. At this time there was warmth in it, along with something else that made several ambassadors shift uncomfortably in their seats. If we are connected to the architects, why have we spent our entire history fighting each other instead of conquering the galaxy? Why did we struggle for thousands of years just to survive on our own world? Why did we have to discover everything ourselves, with no memory of any ancient power or purpose? The elder had no answer. Neither did anyone else in the Great Hall. Laura sat back down and crossed her arms again. Maybe you should find out before you decide whether to fear us. The investigation fleet arrived in Earth's solar system 2 weeks after the council meeting. 12 ships from 7 different species formed a careful formation around the human homeworld, their sensors scanning everything from the distant ice of the outer planets to the burning surface of the sun. Leading the alien delegation was High Inspector Zenkoth of the Vorith Collective, a tall female with silver-gray skin and a reputation for finding truth in places where others saw only mystery. Laura Bennett stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the alien vessels take up their positions. Her crew moved around her with practiced efficiency, monitoring communications and coordinating with the inspection team. Lieutenant Sam Crawford, her chief science officer, worked at his station with barely contained excitement. He had dreamed of studying alien technology since childhood, and now he had the chance to work alongside scientists from civilizations millions of years older than humanity. Commander, the Vorath flagship is requesting a direct channel, reported communications officer Maria Santos from her station. Laura nodded. Put them through. The main view screen flickered and Zenkoth's angular face appeared. Her 4 eyes studied Laura with an intensity that would have made most humans uncomfortable. But Laura had grown used to alien scrutiny over the past few weeks. Commander Bennett. My team is ready to begin the investigation, Zenkoth said. I want to be clear about something before we proceed. I do not believe the theories about human connection to the architects. I think your species is simply an anomaly, a civilization that evolved in isolation and developed unusually quickly due to environmental factors. I intend to prove this and put the Council's fears to rest. Laura smiled slightly. I appreciate your honesty, Inspector. I hope you find what you are looking for. Zenkoth's eyes narrowed, trying to read meaning in the human's expression. Finding none. She ended the communication and ordered her teams to begin their work. The investigation started with Earth's moon. Human scientists had explored the lunar surface for over a century, but they had always focused on the near side, the face that was visible from Earth. The far side had received less attention. Its barren gray plains was considered uninteresting compared to other targets in the solar system. The alien sensors found something within the first hour. Sam Crawford was the first human to see the images. He stood in the joint research center that had been established on the Vorath flagship, surrounded by scientists from half a dozen species. The holographic display showed a section of the lunar far side, an area that human probes had photographed countless times. But the alien sensors could see deeper than human technology, and what they revealed made everyone in the room fall silent. Beneath the gray dust, carved into the ancient rock of the moon, were symbols. They stretched for miles across the surface, invisible to normal observation, but unmistakable under deep spectrum scanning. The patterns were complex and beautiful, spiraling designs that seemed to move and shift even in the still images. "These are architect glyphs," whispered a Vorath researcher, her voice trembling. "The same symbols found in pre-war ruins across the galaxy." "There is no doubt." Zenkoth pushed through the crowd to examine the display more closely. Her silver skin had turned several shades paler. "This cannot be correct." "Run the scans again." They ran the scans 3 more times. The results were always the same. Sam noticed something that the others had missed. He stepped forward and pointed to a section of the display where the symbols seemed different from the rest. "Look at the weathering patterns," he said. "These symbols are not all the same age. The main design is extremely old, probably millions of years. But this section here is much newer, maybe 100,000 years at most." The alien scientists turned to look at him with various expressions of surprise. A Vorath researcher ran additional analysis and confirmed Sam's observation. "The human is correct," she said, sounding almost offended by the fact. "Someone returned to this location and added to the original design long after the architects were supposed to be sealed in the Hollow Reach." The investigation continued with growing unease. On Mars, deep, penetrating sensors revealed a massive structure buried beneath Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. The structure was clearly artificial, its geometric precision impossible to mistake for natural formation. It extended for hundreds of miles in every direction, and its purpose remained completely unknown. Even the oldest scientists in the group had never seen anything like it. The asteroid belt provided the most disturbing discovery of all. Scattered among the countless rocks and debris were fragments of something enormous. Pieces of machinery that had once been part of a single structure. Analysis suggested that the original device had been the size of a small planet. Designed to harness energy on a scale that defied comprehension, something had torn it apart with incredible violence, scattering its remains across millions of miles. What could destroy something that large? Maria Santos asked when Sam shared the findings with the Horizons crew. Sam shook his head slowly. "I do not know. But whatever it was, the destruction was deliberate. This was not an accident. Someone took that machine apart on purpose." Zenkoth called an emergency meeting in the Joint Research Center. Her earlier confidence had completely disappeared. She stood before the gathered scientists and investigators looking lost and troubled, her 4 eyes unable to focus on any single point. "I was wrong," she admitted quietly. "Humans are not an anomaly. The architect presence in this system is undeniable. They were here not just millions of years ago during the original exile, but much more recently. The barriers around the Hollow Reach were supposed to be impenetrable, but clearly something passed through them. Something came to this system and left these markers." Laura stepped forward. She had been listening quietly throughout the investigation, letting the aliens make their own discoveries and draw their own conclusions. Now she spoke for the first time in hours. "The question is not just what they left behind," she said. "The question is why. The architects were supposed to be prisoners, sealed away forever, but they clearly maintained contact with this system. They watched humanity develop. They may have even guided our evolution in ways we cannot detect." She turned to face the assembled scientists directly. "Your council has been afraid of what humans might be, but you have been asking the wrong question. You keep wondering if we are dangerous because of our connection to the architects. What you should be asking is this: what did the architects want from us? What purpose did they have in mind when they seeded this system and watched over it for 100,000 years?" Zenkoth met Laura's gaze. For the first time, there was something like respect in her expression. Do you have an answer, Commander? Laura shook her head. Not yet, but I know where we might find one. She pointed to the holographic star map that floated in the center of the room. Her finger indicated the dark region on the edge of the galaxy, the hollow reach, the forbidden zone, the prison that had held the architects for millions of years. The answers are in there, Laura said. Everything we have found in this system points inward, toward that blank spot on your atlas. Whatever the architects wanted, whatever they were planning, the truth is waiting in the hollow reach. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Laura was suggesting. Crossing the barriers into the hollow reach was forbidden by the oldest laws of galactic civilization. No one had attempted it in millions of years. The fear of what lay beyond had kept entire species from even approaching the border. But Laura Bennett was human, and humans had never been very good at following rules made by others. I am going to find out what is in there, she said quietly. You can come with me, or you can watch from a safe distance. But I am going. Zenkath looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. Then I suppose the Voroth Collective will be watching very carefully indeed. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within days of the investigation's findings being leaked, panic had taken hold of civilizations that had been stable for millions of years. The discovery of architect ruins in the human solar system confirmed the worst fears of every species that remembered the ancient war. Humanity was connected to the most dangerous beings the galaxy had ever known. And no one could predict what that connection might mean. Emergency sessions of the Galactic Council became daily events. Representatives screamed at each other across the Great Hall, their usual dignity forgotten in the face of existential terror. Some demanded that humanity be quarantined immediately, their solar systems sealed off from the rest of the galaxy until the threat could be assessed. Others called for more extreme measures, suggesting that the human homeworld should be destroyed before the species could realize its full potential. A smaller group argued for calm and reason. They pointed out that humans had shown no signs of the destructive tendencies that had characterized the architects. Humanity had reached the stars through their own efforts, without any apparent memory of their possible heritage. Perhaps the connection was superficial. Perhaps the architects had simply observed Earth, without actually influencing its development. These moderate voices were drowned out by the rising tide of fear. On Earth, humanity watched the galactic reaction with a mixture of confusion and growing anger. Most humans had never heard of the architects until a few weeks ago. They had no memory of ancient powers or cosmic purposes. They were simply people who had worked hard to reach the stars, only to be told that they were monsters in waiting. Captain Jake Morrison stood before the United Nations General Assembly as the chosen voice of humanity's response. He was a tall man with gray hair and steady eyes, a veteran of both Earth's conflicts and humanity's first ventures into deep space. Behind him, a holographic display showed images from across the planet, people going about their daily lives, building families, creating art, struggling with the same challenges that every species faced. The galaxy fears us because of what some ancient beings may have done millions of years ago, Jake said, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber and to billions of viewers watching across the planet. They look at us and see the shadow of the architects. But they do not see us who we actually are, what we have actually done. He gestured to the display behind him. We did not conquer the stars through ancient gifts or inherited power. We clawed our way up from the mud through 10,000 years of struggle. We survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We survived wars that we inflicted on ourselves, wars that nearly destroyed us completely. His voice grew stronger, carrying the weight of all human history. We reached the stars not because we were given the knowledge, but because we refused to stop reaching. Every advancement came through sacrifice and determination. We had no architects to guide us. We had no ancient technology to build upon. We had only ourselves and our stubborn refusal to accept any limit as final. The assembly hall was silent, hanging on every word. The galaxy wants to know if we are dangerous, Jake continued. Here is my answer. Yes, we are dangerous. We are dangerous to any obstacle placed in our path. We are dangerous to any problem that threatens our survival. We are dangerous to any enemy that tries to destroy us. But we are not dangerous to those who offer us friendship and cooperation. We have proven throughout our history that we can be trusted. Allies and loyal partners. They paused and looked directly into the cameras. Broadcast his image across the stars. Goo. Not judge us by what you think we might become. Judge us by what we have already proven ourselves to be. The speech did little to calm galactic fears, but it united humanity in a way that nothing else could have. For the first time in history, every nation on Earth stood together against a common threat, not an invasion or a disaster, but the simple fact of being judged for crimes they had never committed, while the political battles raged. Laura Bennett made her decision. The horizon hung at the edge of the hollow reach, its sensors scanning the invisible barrier that had contained the architects for millions of years. The ship's crew stood at their stations, waiting for their commander's order. They all knew what she intended to do. They all knew the risks, and they were all staying anyway. The Council has issued 17 separate orders forbidding us from crossing the barrier. Maria Santos reported from her communications station. The Vorath Collective is threatening to revoke our trade agreements. The Elthari have declared us enemies of galactic civilization. Laura nodded slowly. And what are they actually doing about it? Sam Crawford checked his sensors and almost smiled. Nothing. They are watching from a safe distance, exactly as Zenkoth promised. No one wants to get close enough to stop us. Laura understood. The galaxy feared what might happen if humans crossed into the Hollow Reach, but they feared following them even more. If there was something terrible waiting on the other side, better to let the humans discover it first. Take us through, Laura ordered. The horizon moved forward. Approaching the barrier that had stood unbroken for millions of years, the ship's sensors registered strange readings and energy patterns that did not match anything in the galactic databases. Gravitational fluctuations that seemed to bend space in impossible directions. The barrier was not just a wall. It was something far more complex. A structure built by beings who understood physics at a level that modern civilization could not match. And then they were through. The transition was surprisingly gentle. One moment they were in normal space, and the next they were somewhere else entirely. The stars looked different, here brighter, closer, arranged in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Ahead of them lay a vast network of structures that defied description. Artificial constructs that spread across light years of space, like a web made by some cosmic spider. This is not a prison, Sam whispered, staring at his displays in disbelief. This is something else entirely. Laura leaned forward in her command chair, her eyes wide with wonder. The structures before them were beautiful beyond anything she had ever seen, flowing curves of silver and gold that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Platforms and stations and ships that made the greatest achievements of galactic civilization look like toys. Take us closer, she said. Find out what this place really is. As the horizon moved deeper into the Hollow Reach, its sensors began to pick up something unexpected. There was a signal emanating from the center of the network, a transmission that repeated endlessly, patient and unchanging. It had been broadcasting for millions of years, waiting for someone to finally hear it. The signal was in a language that the ship's computers could not translate. But buried within the complex patterns was something that made Laura's heart stop, a sequence of sounds that her human ears recognized immediately. Words. Human words. A message spoken in a language that had not existed when the architects were sealed away, but that they had somehow known would eventually be created. We have been waiting for you, the message said. Welcome home. Alawada? Laura closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Everything was about to change, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. Whatever secrets the architects had been keeping for millions of years, she was about to learn them all. Find the source of that signal, she ordered. It is time to get some answers. The horizon traveled deeper into the Hollow Reach for 3 days, following the signal toward its source. The network of structures grew denser as they approached the center, till the ship was navigating through a forest of impossible architecture that stretched in every direction. Nothing here had decayed or broken down. Everything was preserved perfectly, waiting patiently for visitors that had taken millions of years to arrive. Laura stood on the bridge, watching the alien wonders pass by on the view screen. Her crew worked in near silence, overwhelmed by the scale of what surrounded them. They had expected to find a prison, dark and terrible place where dangerous beings had been locked away. Instead, they had found something that looked more like a sanctuary, carefully preserved library of knowledge and achievement. The signal led them to a massive platform at the center of the network. It was circular, perhaps 100 miles across, and at its heart stood a single structure that looked almost simple compared to everything else they had seen. A tower of white stone rose from the platform's surface, its architecture clean and elegant. At the top of the tower, a light pulsed gently in rhythm with the signal they had been following. "I am detecting an atmosphere on the platform," Sam reported, checking his sensors for the 10th time. "Breathable air, stable temperature, no detectable hazards. It is almost like someone prepared this place for human visitors." Laura made her decision without hesitation. "I am going down there. Sam, Maria, you are with me. Everyone else stays with the ship." The shuttle descended through the artificial atmosphere and landed at the base of the white tower. Laura stepped out first, her boots touching the smooth surface of the platform. The air smelled clean and fresh, with a faint sweetness that reminded her of flowers blooming in spring. Above her, the light at the top of the tower pulsed steadily. Beckoning her forward, the door at the base of the tower opened as they approached, sliding aside without any sound. Inside, a spiral staircase led upward, carved from the same white stone as the exterior. They climbed in silence, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The walls were covered with imagescenes from human history, rendered in perfect detail. Cave paintings and medieval battles, industrial cities and rocket launches, all leading upward toward the present day at the top of the tower. They found a single room with a domed ceiling that showed the stars of the hollow reach. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and above the pedestal floated a sphere of golden light that shifted and moved like something alive. "Welcome," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was warm and kind, with a quality that made Laura think of grandparents and old teachers and everyone who had ever guided her with patience and love. "We have waited a very long time for this moment." Laura stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the golden sphere. "Who are you? What is this place?" The light pulsed gently as the voice answered. "We are what remains of those you call the architects. Not our bodies, those were released into the void long ago. But our knowledge, our memories, our hopes for the future, all preserved here, waiting for you." Sam moved to stand beside Laura, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. "The galaxy believes you were exiled higher imprisoned after the war." The voice carried a tone of gentle sadness. "We understand why they believe that. The war was terrible, and both sides did things that should never be forgotten. But we were not exiled. We chose to leave." The sphere expanded, and suddenly the room was filled with images, not just pictures, but experiences that washed over the three humans like waves of memory. They saw the ancient war from the architect perspective. They felt the grief of watching civilizations they had nurtured turn against them in fear. They understood the impossible choice that the architects had faced. "We had grown beyond what the galaxy could accept," the voice explained. "Our experiments frightened the younger species, and perhaps they were right to be frightened. We had become too powerful, too different. Staying would have meant endless conflict, constant fear, the destruction of everything we had helped to build."
Oh.
Laura felt tears running down her cheeks, though she did not fully understand why. "So you left?" "Yes. We withdrew to this region and allowed the younger species to build their barriers. We let them believe they had defeated us, because their belief would give them confidence to grow and develop without our shadow hanging over them. Then we prepared for our true departure, our journey to another galaxy, to find new frontiers where we could continue our work without causing harm to those we loved." The images shifted, showing the architects leaving the Milky Way, in vessels that moved between galaxies as easily as human ships moved between planets. They were truly gone, having departed millions of years ago for destinations beyond imagination. "But before we left," the voice continued, "we created one final gift. An experiment impossibility. We wanted to know if a species could develop our abilities naturally, without the burden of knowing what they were meant to become. We seeded your world with the potential for greatness, and then we waited. Maria spoke for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. Humanity was the experiment, as the voice confirmed. We gave you the capacity for our abilities, but none of our knowledge. We watched from afar as you struggled and grew, as you fought and learned, as you reached for the stars through your own determination. You were never meant to be our heirs in the traditional sense. You were meant to become something new, something that combined our potential with your own unique spirit. Laura looked at the golden sphere with new understanding. The experiment succeeded. That is what the message said. Yes, you have proven that the potential we carried can be developed through natural growth rather than artificial enhancement. You have shown that beings with our capabilities can also possess humility, cooperation, and restraint. You are everything we hoped you would become, more. The sphere began to descend toward the pedestal, and as it touched the surface, the room filled with light. Information poured into the three humans, not overwhelming them, but offering itself gently like a gift waiting to be unwrapped. This is our inheritance to you, the voice said. All our knowledge, all our technology, all our understanding of the universe. It is yours now, to use as you see fit. We trust you to be wiser than we were. Laura returned to the Galactic Council 1 month later. She brought evidence of everything they had discovered, recordings of the architect message. Data from the technology they had found, proof that the ancient threat had departed long ago. The beings the galaxy had feared for millions of years were gone, leaving behind only gifts and hopes for the future. The reaction was mixed. Some species celebrated the news, relieved that the shadow of the architects no longer hung over them. Others remained suspicious, watching humanity with new wariness as they began to access the inheritance they had been given. Change came slowly. At first, new medical treatments, improved ship designs, solutions to problems that had puzzled scientists for generations. Ambassador Keth Voren met with Laura one final time before she departed for the Hollow Reach, where humanity was building a new capital among the preserved wonders of the architect's sanctuary. Will you conquer the galaxy? He asked bluntly. Will you become what the architects were? Laura shook her head and smiled. That was never the point. The architects left because they had outgrown the galaxy. Eventually, we will do the same. But first, we have a lot of catching up to do. And maybe, if you are willing, we can help bring everyone else along for the journey. Keth Voren considered her words for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship that he had learned during their time together. I will recommend that the Vorith Collective accept your offer, he said. Perhaps it is time we stopped fearing the unknown and started exploring it together. Laura took his hand and shook it firmly. The Galactic Atlas was updated for the first time in centuries. The blank region was filled in at last, marked with careful notation that would puzzle and inspire future generations. The words were simple but carried the weight of everything that had happened. Here be humans. Explore at your own discretion. The galaxy had spent ages fearing what lay beyond its borders. Now, it would learn to grow alongside something far more remarkably. Species that had inherited the stars and chosen to share them. The Atlas no longer ended at the Hollow Reach. It simply opened into a new chapter that no one had ever imagined possible. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, the architects watched their children take their first steps into a larger universe, and they were proud.